Hello again, everyone. We are Gaming by Gaslight, and welcome back to Stellaris as the Pax Mexicana. So, 1.2 is live. Apparently it's also caused a couple of graphical glitches, that is. I'm assuming this is because I had some kind of, I had this mod to increase the number of colors available for Empire, so hopefully there wouldn't be as many repeat colors. But apparently what's ended up happening with that is must have just not been compatible, so basically everything is turned to be white. Or at least everything that had a custom color was turned to be white. You also notice this black splotch over here. We finally got one of the endgame crises, and it's all the way on the other side of the galaxy, and it looks kind of disappointing so far, to be honest. This is the AI robot rebellion. Basically, they have taken this system, and I'm assuming they're probably going to get immediately destroyed, because they're just one system, unless the quote-unquote AI, well, I don't know, I'm trying not to confuse this. These are the robot rebellion. If the AI empires, just the actual, you know, computer-controlled stuff, if they don't react to this right away, these guys actually could become a real problem. Plus, other systems with robots might rise up. Mine probably won't, because of the fact that they have full citizenship rights and can be elected as leaders and stuff. So, I mean, they'll be like, well, why would we join in with these AI people? We're perfectly happy here. We're also in a war, because as soon as I unpaused the game after having 1.0 enabled, basically, diplomacy just exploded, because there's been a lot of changes to how diplomacy worked. Also, the Guesibors left our empire. Also, there was an empire in my empire that I didn't know about until just now. Apparently there was some kind of pre-sentient, or not pre-sentient, but a primitive nation, and yeah, they've popped up here. Let's see, they're xenophobes. Of course they are. Gosh darn xenophobes. We'll have to deal with them by the by, but for the time being, basically, these guys left, and they won't come back because the Juskins will not allow them to. They do like us, though. We do have a research agreement. That's also a cool thing. Funny thing, during the beta, research agreements, hopefully this has been fixed in the final launch, but in the beta, research agreements actually gave a penalty to research, so you could basically screw over your enemies and have them love you for it by just trading research with them. Anyway, yeah, so there's now a trust mechanic, and embassies no longer exist. So, yeah. And as you can see here, a lot of stuff that used to be in our thingamabob, in, like, trade and whatnot, is now in here, like our migration treaties. And you know what's weird? I had a migration treaty with these guys at some point. I forget whether I showed that on camera or not, but I do have slugs that migrated into my empire. I even had a weird thing where a slave, because these guys, as a collectivist, they enslaved themselves for the good of the empire or something. But, yeah, yeah, I had slaves. This is a really stupid mechanic, in my opinion. If a slave migrates to your empire, which makes no sense in the first place, and you liberate them because you yourself don't believe in slavery, they get a happiness penalty, and a pretty big one at that, for having been enslaved. Which I think is stupid and should be looked at. I don't know if it was fixed, because I didn't read the full patch notes yet. Because, well, first of all, let's just explain what's happening here. These guys declared war on my vassal for some reason, because they're idiots, and apparently are like, well, these guys are smaller than us, so we should be able to win. It's not like their overlord is going to come in and wreck our day or anything. Also, these guys left their alliance. A whole bunch of nations left their alliances. Just, I guess the changes to diplomacy caused a whole bunch of things to break up. I'm kind of a mixed opinion of the diplomacy changes, because they can make for some really weird things. There's also this ridiculously massive, let's see if we can see it over here. Actually, it'll be hard to see here because we're in 2 wars at the moment. But basically, I guess these guys, like, let's just say someone over here, we would have a minus 1,000 penalty to a most diplomatic relations because we're not quote-unquote diplomatically relevant, which is a factor based on distance. Hopefully it's distance just between borders and not the capital. I'm pretty sure it's between borders, not the capital, because that would be kind of weird if it was based on distance between capitals, because then, yeah. But basically, that seems like something, like a penalty that, 1, shouldn't be quite as big as it is, and 2, hopefully it's something that if it doesn't now, it should scale based on, like, the wormhole, or not the wormhole, but the FTL technology of the nations. Because distance later game, like, these guys are close to us when you think about it in this game, but there is a lot of physical space between us, but it wouldn't really take that long to get here, so you'd figure, especially at this point in the game, just about everyone is diplomatically relevant to everyone else just because the whole galaxy has become more and more interconnected. Sort of like how globalization has worked with Earth and stuff like that. Also, we lost all our technology here because of the change, I guess, between systems and sectors, or planets and systems with the limit here, which kind of annoyed me. There's also basically no benefit. It annoys me so much that Paradox keeps reducing the benefits here. Like, I want more systems under my direct control, not less, dash it all. Mostly because sectors are still dumb as bricks and stuff like that. But anyway, I've been kind of rambling. For the most part, I just want to say 1.2, good update. Add some new stuff. Some stuff I haven't even seen yet. Like, apparently there's going to be some kind of diplomatic incident events, which hopefully add a bit of extra flavor. But basically the mid-game and late game are still kind of stale, which you've probably noticed because for the last several episodes, really, I've been skipping massive periods of time. At least it feels like massive periods of time in between episodes because there's just nothing going on worth showing off. It would be basically just me talking for 25 minutes, and considering the fact for at least the last 10 episodes, I've been basically spending the majority of the episode complaining about stuff that I don't like and think is terribly, terribly broken and needs to be fixed. Like Sector AI, I'm going to keep complaining about that, dash it all, but not right now. Basically, I feel at this point, we're at a stage where we've basically won the game, even though we haven't met any of the victory conditions. There's no slave-based empires left. I could easily take any of the fallen empires. Also, that prisoner from the last time, he came from the Opoglex, which is pretty cool. I like the fact that the game actually sort of uses logic. Like, it's not just from some random... I mean, it would kind of make sense if it was from a random empire that had completely fallen apart and no longer existed. But it's kind of interesting that you have this xenophobic fallen empire, and then you have the xenophobic fallen empire that was over here, and clearly at some point at their height, they fought one another. And the one here was, I guess, given to these guys as some kind of, like, peace, or in their peace deal, they handed over their leader. Which, when you think about it, that'd be an interesting event that you could get in the game right now, where basically, if you have, like, an admiral or a general or something, when a war ends, the empire you were just fighting with, if both of you are still relatively powerful, could make something that's like, this admiral committed atrocities during the war, we demand you turn him over. Stuff like that. But basically where I'm going with all this, and I've been kind of rambling back and forth between different subjects, I think I'm going to wrap this series up here because, one, the performance, actually this has been basically the big thing that's made me decide to call it, is that performance, as you can kind of see here, like, it's really kind of not that great once we get into the later game. So I feel at this point, I'm actually not sure if it's just my system. I'm pretty sure it's not my computer because my specs are relatively beefy. I mean, they're not top of the line, but they're fairly high end, I like to think. And I think it could just be some kind of like poor optimization thing. Apparently sectors, especially large ones, probably this one, they contribute a lot to lag, so that could be something with it. It could just be the fact that the Clausewitz engine that this is built on is kind of being pushed to its limit with this game. I'm not really sure, but basically, on a really large galaxy like this, things are really slowing down, and with the fact that when we're not at war, there's not much happening, and also the fact that I've spent a lot of the last few episodes complaining about things that I feel are going to eventually get balanced and fixed up and stuff, but it'll probably be a couple of patches before the game is at a state where I am really, really happy with it. So I figure I'm going to wrap this series up, and we're going to shelve Stellaris for the time being. But I do intend to come back, because I do really still love this game. And to prove that, I want to switch over to a save file I've started in Asimov. Because I basically started this back in the Asimov beta, because after the last couple episodes I recorded, I was feeling really, really, like, just... Like this, the Pax Mexicana series was kind of falling down and stuff like that. So I figured I'm going to just play around in the beta, see how things feel, And if I can sort of get that magic back, you'll also notice we're playing as the Gaslight Empire, and this was this symbol here was made for me by a viewer subscriber, Flying Gecko. So thank you very much for making me this. And at some point, I think we're gonna actually come back into a proper series with this whole Gaslight Empire thing. But we're gonna wait a little bit, just to let a couple of patches go by and for things to get adjusted and so forth. As you can also tell, I just finished a war in this particular thing. Or this game, and all was going pretty well, and I just have a bit of management to do. But basically, when I was playing this, the early game reminded me why I love this game so much. I mean, when you start off a new game, and the whole galaxy is just at your fingertips here. We're also playing on a slightly smaller galaxy, just 600 instead of 1,000, or whatever the second largest galaxy size is. But basically, just going out and exploring and finding things and meeting people for the first time and just all kinds of back and forth. And it was really awesome, this start, because we started next to, I think it was an advanced start, fanatical, xenophobic, militarist spiritualist, and they attacked us. Or me, I guess. And I fought back, and I was making research agreements with these guys and these guys so that they would give me minerals so that I could afford to build up my navy to fight back. And it was really close, because they had destroyers, and I hadn't researched those yet. So their firepower was stronger than mine. But I was able to strategically, and we're playing in a wormhole, or not wormhole, a hyperlane-only game, which adds a certain extra strategic value, because everyone can only move along the hyperlane, so you get choke points and cool stuff like that. But anyway, basically I maneuvered around and blew up all their spaceports and sieged out their capital and forced them to actually get annexed by me, which I thought was really cool. It was really fun and intense and stuff like that. And going through all the anomalies and stuff you encounter at the beginning of the game, and encountering the little weird aliens and the crystalline entities and all that cool stuff, it reminded me why I love this game so much. And basically, I feel that the mid and late game don't live up to what the early game promises at this point in Stellaris' lifespan. And I know Paradox is aware of this, and in fact, in a sort of an interview they did for, I forget where I read it, but they basically acknowledged some of these shortcomings and things they felt could be better, like post-launch and stuff. So I know that they're going to be working on it, though to some degree it kind of makes you wonder why they didn't just delay the game a couple of months. But there was probably reasons, business stuff, when, you have to launch things at certain times and stuff like that. And of course there's the fact that they could have delayed it a couple of months, and then they would have launched it, and then there'd be still something that would be worth complaining about probably. But anyway, basically, the idea I'm thinking is that I want to set Stellaris aside for a couple of months, and we'll come back to it probably after the first expansion gets released sometime in the fall or winter or something, and see how the game's progressed, and hopefully by that point in the mid and late game feel a lot more rich and as exciting and enjoyable as the early game is, so that as the game transitions from that sort of just you're making your first steps out into space and exploring the cosmos and everything, then you start, of course, getting all your diplomatic stuff, and hopefully they add a bit more to diplomacy, because right now the game really does feel like if you're not conquering, you're not playing the game right, because there's really not a lot to do during peace yet. So hopefully we see some more culture and I feel like I'm saying diplomatic weird, like I'm sort of having a delay there between syllables. Anyway, but yeah, basically a culture and diplomatic game that could be enriched a bit. Maybe take a bit of inspiration from Civ 5, which I thought had a pretty cool culture and tourism and stuff like that. Just stuff to enrich that part of the game a little bit more as well. And hopefully we see that, so that once you go from the exploration into the really clashing with other empires thing and fighting for supremacy and stuff like that, we can get a bit more. Also, random final suggestion before I wrap this episode up that I would really like to see when it comes to FX divergence is that I would love it if FX divergence wasn't random, but that there were weights that would encourage like sort of things. Like the way I feel it is that FX divergence and stuff like that should actually be divided into multiple tiers. Basically, you should end up with pressure from the home world reducing FX divergence on the planets immediately nearby, and those planets their FX would apply pressure on all the planets surrounding them, and so on and so forth. So what would hopefully happen is you'd end up with this sort of multi-layered system where planets and systems and sectors would sort of be drawn towards having similar ideas. So you'd end up with like pockets of materialists and pockets of spiritualists and stuff like that. And then maybe when you border empires, depending on the ethics of the two empires, you might end up having xenophiles slowly turn into xenophobes if you have like an aggressive enemy, or maybe if there's peaceful relations for a really long time, it encourages xenophilia or stuff like that. In fact, I feel there could be a lot more to really make ethics a bit more complex than simple sort of binary, spiritual versus materialist, xenophile versus xenophobe. It'd be interesting to see some complex sort of hybrid ethics that you couldn't pick at the start of the game, but which evolved over time based on how ethics sort of mingled with each other. And just if there was more strategic ways to influence how ethics divergence happen, so that you'd still end up with ethics divergence, but you would be able to have some say and minor control over it based on how you built things up. Anyway, I could probably do a whole episode, I guess, just randomly rambling on about all these suggestions and stuff, but basically, this episode's gone on long enough, so I just want to say, as always, thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know what you want to see next while we're kind of waiting on coming back to Stellaris. And in the meanwhile, I will see you all in the next video.